Force be with you.
Welcome back to the GNK Droid Fan Club.
I'm here today with Jackson and our guest star, Courtney Tregellas.
Hey guys.
Today we'll be talking about the Clone Wars, and it is set 10 years after the Phantom Menace, as the galaxy has continued to be surrounded in strife as powerful forces begin to the beginning of the Clone Wars and the beginning to the end of the New Republic. The Attack of the Clones got a 6.5 on IMDb and 65% Rotten Tomatoes. What did you guys think of the movies? Because that's very stark on how they rated it.
Well, as you know, I gave Phantom Menace a 3 out of 10, I believe, and I did dive pretty heavily into why I gave it that rating. This gets a 3.1. Because
I thought it was out of 5.
No, it was out of 10, because I started at 5, and I was presuming that was out of 10. Into the mic.
What did you think, Courtney?
I thought it was actually really good because, it's a love story, so we gotta love love stories. So I think probably a 6. Well, it's 6 out of 10. Why are you threatening me with the lightsaber?
Oh, why did you give it a 6 out of 10 besides the love stories?
I don't know. It was good.
And what about the love story was appealing?
It's a love story. I don't know. I'm really bad at this. Okay, you have to stop threatening me with that.
Okay, what did you guys think of Count Dooku and his appearance in the Clone Wars, but not really in the Phantom Menace?
Wasted potential. I think with Count Dooku, you have that aspect of him being a former Jedi, which, again, that was the same with Darth Vader. I felt he could have been introduced in Phantom Menace and wouldn't have made much of a difference. To be honest, he doesn't really have that. Similar to Darth Maul in the last movie, he doesn't have that much of an appeal or anything that particularly makes him compelling or interesting as a villain. And yeah, I don't find anything really that interesting about Count Dooku.
What about you, Courtney?
I have to agree with Jackson. I almost feel like more could be added to his character, I guess.
He is the perfect example of a gray villain. He only joined the Confederate, the Separatist army, because he felt that was what would bring peace to the galaxy quicker. Then
I wish we were given more reasons for why he left the Jedi Order in the first place. We're not given anything in the movies.
Darth
Vader, we obviously get his origin story in these movies. He was deceived by Palpatine, but in the case of someone like Count Dooku, who we know from those films was a former Jedi, we don't really know why he left the Jedi Order. If it was just out of greed or self-interest, we can assume so based off the small snippets of what can hardly be classified as character that we get in those films, because there's not much character in there.
Yeah, of course.
But not really given anything particularly interesting about him.
Then what did you think of how they developed the character of Anakin Skywalker through this film?
You have this interesting contrast between him and Luke Skywalker. Obviously, with Luke, his path to become a Jedi is vastly different from his father's. By his time, the Jedi Order is almost completely eradicated, and
with
so
only
he's taught
old Ben.
Obi-Wan. Yeah, he's taught under Obi-Wan and Yoda, but he becomes a more successful Jedi because I would argue the reason he becomes a more successful Jedi is he embraces the idea of using his emotion as a strength. In this case, the love for his father and the belief that he can be redeemed. Anakin, you see him going through this conflict where he lacks the only emotional attachment he has to anyone is really through his master Obi-Wan and Padme. And you can see how desperate he is to feel some sort of healthy relationship with another person, because the Jedi forbid that type of
Then
relationship.
his relationship with his mother was ruined as well in this film.
Yeah. Which I'd argue leads the Jedi play a major part in his downfall, because obviously when he's taken to be a Jedi, he's a young child. I don't know if this is completely canon, but previously in previous comics and media, Jedi find their apprentices when they're almost toddlers, I believe.
Yeah, they don't really get.
Yeah.
They don't really know their mothers.
That doesn't play a major critical aspect or conflict throughout their training. But in this case, you have Anakin is very attached to his mother and wants to protect her. And when she dies, that's almost a downward spiral for him.
Yeah, as he famously said, I killed them. I killed them all. Not just the men, but the women and children too. And what do you think about that, Courtney?
He's kind of ruthless and a little bit heartless here. And I think he really just wants revenge for what, he really wants in life.
Which is a relationship with his mother.
Well,
What do you-
more or less.
what do you think about that
I would
relationship?
argue it's not really a desire to have a relationship with his mother, but just a desire to have a relationship in general, because he was dependent on living with his mother in slavery, and that was really one of the only, other than friendships with other slaves, that was the only basic human.
And those friendships weren't actually that great. He was more like the weird kid.
Yeah, and in the Jedi Order, he's even more alone than ever, which I'd argue is, again, the main reason he goes down the downward spiral to
And
the
then
dark
his
side that he
loneliness.
does.
Padme kind of fills that gap.
Now,
The love story.
I don't necessarily think this film does a very well job of portraying that in regards to story. I think this film is not that good. I find its plot to be nonsensical and just not that good in regards to storytelling. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, certain aspects of it. So, the plot. I think, so at its core concept, you have Anakin Skywalker and then Obi-Wan Kenobi. They're going on their own different journeys in this film, so they're not together, and so this film doesn't really focus on the bond or relationship with them. You get a glimpse of it during the Battle of Geonosis, but other than that, they spend most of the film apart, which I think could have been was wasted potential, because they could have looked at what defined those two as characters on their own. You could have looked deeper into how his character has grown since we last saw him in Phantom Menace, and we could have seen how Obi-Wan has changed as a Jedi Master, how that's affected him. But really, he's basically the same that he was in the Phantom Menace, except
He got a beard, though.
Except he has a beard,
He's hotter
a new
now.
hair,
At least that's what my sister tells me.
a new haircut,
Well, I can disagree.
I don't
and
know.
he's a Jedi Master.
Mr. Ewan McGregor. He definitely developed as a character, Obi-Wan, in his physical looks and his skill with a lightsaber. You definitely saw that his lightsaber style kind of changed throughout the film. He became more of it's more fluid. It's not so much stab, stab, stab as it was in the Phantom Menace. And what do you think about that, Courtney?
Can you repeat the question, please?
What do you think about Obi-Wan Kenobi's change in lightsaber fluency?
Well, I didn't exactly watch Phantom Menace, so I can't exactly give an opinion.
Wrong film.
Okay, well then,
Whoops.
what do you guys think about the discovery of the clone army by accident?
That was pretty interesting. Like, how could he not know that that was happening is the question.
The idea of a clone army, it's... When you first hear of the Clone Wars and the original film, you have almost no idea. We didn't really have an idea of what that event was until this film came out. And that's specifically because George Lucas didn't want any expanded universe. But yeah, so this goes a bit against what I imagine people back then when Obi-Wan spoke of the Clone Wars during that era of time of the original films, because the idea of this clone army, this fighting for the Jedi, I mean, it makes sense for the Jedi obviously the Jedi traditionally are peacekeepers, so it wouldn't really make sense for them to be soldiers fighting in the war. One, there's probably not enough of them to fight a war with the Separatist Alliance.
Well, there really wasn't a war until the Clone Wars. Until, like, the end of the Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm.
But the Clone Wars didn't technically start until the Battle of Geonosis.
Well, yeah,
That's
but
true.
the war escalated after the events of the Phantom Menace in between that 10-year period.
But yeah, I think
It almost kind of seems like the discovery of the clone army, it felt kind of like an afterthought. Like, he went there for something, discovered something else, and basically almost abandoned his quest to kill Jango Fett.
But yeah, I think the discovery of this clone army, it falls in line with what I said earlier in the last episode, which I really liked about these films, is how they focus a lot more on the alien aspect of this universe. This definitely adds to that, because now you have cloning technology, the ability to create a massive army of very well-trained soldiers. It's on a side of this universe, and it's the type of technology that you don't really see a lot of in the original trilogy, and it's almost... I think maybe that was an effect of the Empire ruling at the time. There was a lot more...
They kind of stunted the growth of science.
They stunted the growth of... Yeah, what you said right there. And I find that to be an interesting aspect of these films. There's a lot more sci-fi... There's just so much weird technology going on during this time period that you see half of it's not even present in the next time period of films. And I think that's just an interesting aspect of the Empire's taking over and ruling.
And what did you guys think of the Battle of Geonosis?
It gets lame. The setup for it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know, you have the two Jedi, which are the main characters, and then Padme, who are all trapped on Geonosis, and they're about to do this little... They're all about to be completely annihilated by these three gladiator beasts that they throw out on the arena. And it makes sense for like a cool action scene, but the setup doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What was Count Dooku's purpose? Obviously, it was for entertaining the Geonosians, but it's kind of seemed like a dumb idea. I guess it would make sense. Maybe Palpatine was like, we could lure the Jedi into this and ultimately start the Clone Wars, which, because we know he's technically managing both sides of the Clone Wars to help him.
Yeah, he's
for
got a
many
win-win
years
situation.
to ultimately gain the position of power that we see he has in the original trilogy. But I just think the setup for this is a bit odd. And I also don't think the battle between the droid army and the Jedi is particularly interesting. It's just sort of just a bunch of Jedi. And I don't think the battle droid army in general is pretty interesting. They're just
That's true.
hunks of metal.
Then about the three execution monsters the Geonosians used to try to kill the Jedi and Padme.
I mean, they were pretty interesting.
They're-
They could have been more like, I don't know, scary, I guess. They kind of, I mean, one was literally a huge praying mantis.
Okay, well that's Acklay, first of all.
They're more of a
And
threat.
you see all his teeth, there's like more than 21 of them, as Mr. Wolf would say.
They're more of a threat in the Lego video game than they are in this film.
They
Probably.
Yeah. And then what did you think about the rhinoceros looking one, also called Reek?
Okay, he was kind of lame, honestly. Like, I
And
could
then
have made him a little
about
more scary.
the white tiger Nexu.
I think that one. I like the design of that one.
Yeah,
I do too. I
it's
think
pretty
it's
cool.
I just wish we saw more of that type of creature.
Then what do you guys think about the execution, shall we say, of Jango Fett by Mace Windu and young Jango vowing to kill Mace Windu?
So you know how George Lucas, he once famously said that Star Wars is like poetry, it rhymes. I think this falls in line. Much like his son, he died in the most incredibly lame way imaginable. In the sense that all he did, he was like flying around in his jetpack and he's like, look at me, I have a jetpack, and then he just loses his head.
Mm-hmm.
Oopsie.
Chop.
Chop chop.
Slice, slice.
So
Your head will cook
I
mighty
think-
nice.
Okay.
Okay. What do you think about the execution, Courtney?
It's pretty anticlimactic, if I have to be honest. Like, if you could say better, you could have had, like, a better death in the movie.
More of a rise and falling action, not just a steady
Yeah.
flow.
mm.
Boba Fett's death was much the same. His jetpack just got struck and he went down. Didn't even think to turn it off.
You mentioned how it's sort of a rising action, a falling action. I think this film, and this goes back to what I said earlier, where the story of it's somewhat isn't much of a story. I think much like Phantom Menace, it's full of plot, but it's not really structured like a story. It's more or less structured as multiple events happening simultaneously that don't really have any unique meaning or way to really engage the viewer. The original films, they were appealing in the sense that they followed the journey of one singular character and the conflicts he had with his mission of becoming a Jedi. These films don't really have a sort of unique journey or story.
Kind of
or
what I said in the last episode. It's kind of just they roll with the punches.
yeah, it's just this movie doesn't really have anything to say. It's just 2 hours of exposition. I don't think that works well as a story, though.
You guys have any closing thoughts?
I mean, one thing is that my sister mentioned this, but every time, like, something would fly into the Jedi's hands, it could have been better. Let's just put it that way. When they were using the Force, it could have looked better.
Okay.
This film does follow the age-old tradition of this franchise since George Lucas has had it, of someone losing a limb.
Yes.
Every film, someone
Darth
loses
Maul
either an
lost all
arm,
4.
someone loses a leg, someone loses some part of their body by a
Slice,
lightsaber.
slice.
Anakin loses his hand in this one. Jango Fett loses his head in this one. So George
Okay.
Lucas has an odd obsession with dismemberment.
Okay, well, thanks for listening, guys. God bless America. God bless George Lucas. See you after spring break.
The kid is doing
Welcome back to the GNK Droid. What is it? Am I too energetic?
He's got some lightsaber skills.
I lost my train of thought.
Wait, do you have that in there?
Which
or do I
one
need
is
to
the
say it
battle
again?
of Geonosis?
You know when they all got chained to the pole and the monsters were let at them?
Oh, that's the battle. Oh, right afterwards.
Think about the
What I
executioner.
mean, if I don't cough, I'm gonna sound like I'm dying.
Yeah, she will.
That's what just happened right now.
Are you
when I
cutting
said
us
that's
off?
Please.
She also looks
Oh,
like
no,
she's
this
dying
is
when she
all
has a
being
blood
recorded.
vessel